There's a moment, quiet, subtle, but shattering, when you start to believe something dark about yourself. Not that you're struggling, not that you're wounded, but that you are broken, fundamentally flawed, beyond repair. It doesn't happen all at once. It creeps in slowly, through a string of disappointments, a silence that lingers too long, a failure that feels too familiar, a rejection that echoes deeper than it should. And eventually that pain starts whispering something dangerous. It's not just hard, it's you, you're the problem. That's the moment you begin to believe in your own brokenness. But what if that's a lie? What if pain isn't proof that you're defective, but evidence that you're still alive, still capable of feeling, still being shaped by something far more meaningful than comfort? What if emotional pain is not a malfunction, but a message? In the modern world, we've become obsessed with the idea of fixing ourselves. Self-help, therapy, medication, transformation. It's all framed around the idea that something in you is not right and must be corrected. And while healing is real and necessary, we've often confused healing with erasing pain, with becoming someone who never feels deeply, never stumbles, never doubts. But that's not healing. That's numbness. That's self-erasure. And that's not the path to wholeness. Cslewis once said, "Pain insists upon being attended to. God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our consciences, but shouts in our pains." What if emotional pain is the voice of something sacred? What if it's not screaming that you're broken, but that you're being called? Called to pay attention, to come home to parts of yourself you've abandoned, to shed stories that no longer serve, to confront wounds you were never meant to carry alone. The idea that you're broken is seductive because it explains your suffering with finality. If I'm broken, then there's no point in trying. If I'm broken, then no wonder people leave. If I'm broken, then of course I sabotage good things. It gives you a story, but a false one. Because you are not a machine that malfunctioned. You are not a project that failed. You are a soul in process. You are a living paradox, fragile and powerful, damaged and destined, and above all, still becoming. Think about a wound. It hurts because something precious was touched. A bone breaks because the body tried to protect itself from impact. Skin tears because it stood between the inside and what threatened it from the outside. And yet, the body doesn't treat wounds as flaws. It rushes resources there. It sends healing. It creates new tissue, scar tissue, tougher than before. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. The body does not give up on itself, and neither should you. Pain is not a verdict. It's a signal, and it speaks a language few of us were ever taught to hear. We were taught to fear sadness, to suppress anger, to medicate anxiety, to hide grief. But these are not intruders. They are inner prophets. They tell you where you're still tender, where you still long, where something sacred still breathes beneath the ache. What if we stopped asking, "What's wrong with me?" and started asking, "What is my pain trying to say?" Because pain, when listened to, becomes a compass. It reveals what matters. You don't grieve what you didn't love. You don't rage unless something you value is threatened. You don't feel anxious unless your safety, your belonging, your place in the world feels uncertain. These emotions are not malfunctions, they are maps. They trace the outlines of your deepest values, your longings, your humanity. But it's easier to label yourself as broken than to listen to pain. Because listening requires stillness, and stillness brings up everything you've been running from. The shame, the disappointment, the voice of your inner critic. But it also brings something else. The voice underneath all that noise, the one that doesn't accuse you, the one that calls you home. That voice says, "You're not broken, you're burdened, you're not lost, you're becoming, you're not weak, you're waking up." This voice doesn't shout, it doesn't demand performance. It speaks like water over stone, soft, but shaping. It invites you to see yourself not through the eyes of trauma, but through the eyes of truth. And that truth is this: you are still whole, even when you feel shattered. Emotional pain in this light is not something to be eradicated, but something to be reverently engaged. It's not your enemy, it's your teacher, not to keep you in suffering, but to lead you through it. to the places inside you that still long for light, the places that never stopped hoping, that still believe in love, in belonging, in something more. So what do you do when that voice of brokenness returns? When you wake up heavy and can't explain why? When a memory hits like a wave and you're suddenly drowning in shame? You stop, you breathe, and you remember, this pain is not your punishment. It's your invitation to pause, to listen, to let something deeper rise through the noise, because beneath every ache is a question. What are you ready to release? What are you finally willing to feel? And in that space, healing begins, not by fixing you, but by revealing you. The you beneath the shame, the you beneath the silence, the you who never needed to be perfect, only present. There's a strange thing that happens when you begin to listen to your pain instead of running from it. It starts to reveal meaning, not all at once, not in clean, linear steps, but like pieces of a mosaic, each emotion, each memory, each ache revealing a part of the whole. Pain becomes a doorway, not just into suffering, but into soul, into a deeper layer of who you are and what you were meant to become. In psychology, we often talk about integration, the process of bringing fractured parts of the self back into wholeness. The anxious child, the ashamed teenager, the angry adult. All these pieces of you, cut off, repressed, forgotten, don't disappear. They hide, and they wait. And often emotional pain is there knocking, not to torment you, but to be seen, to be known, to be brought home. Carl Jung wrote, "I'd rather be whole than good," because wholeness includes shadow. It includes contradiction. It includes wounds. To be whole is not to be flawless. It's to be fully here, fully human. And emotional pain is the invitation to that kind of humanity. Not the curated version, the honest one, the version of you that doesn't perform wellness but lives truth. But our culture doesn't reward this kind of honesty. It rewards masks. It rewards productivity over presence, success over self-awareness. And so we learn early on to trade authenticity for acceptance, to abandon our needs to fit someone else's expectations. We smile when we want to scream. We apologize for taking up space. We downplay our dreams, our grief, our desire to be seen. And slowly, we disconnect from ourselves, not because we're broken, but because we were trying to survive. And what is emotional pain if not a survival signal? A flare from the deep saying, you've wandered too far from yourself. Your sadness isn't dysfunction, it's memory. Your anxiety isn't weakness, it's a warning. Your anger isn't sin, it's a signal that something sacred in you is being violated. But these messages are easy to miss when you're moving too fast, or too numb, or too afraid to look. Because looking hurts. It means facing not just what happened, but what you made it mean. That you're not enough. That you're unlovable. That you're alone. These aren't facts. They're interpretations, but when you believe them long enough, they become your inner script. And that script shapes your choices, your relationships, your voice. So how do you rewrite it? You begin by slowing down, not just physically, but spiritually. You begin by creating space for the sacred encounter between your current self and your wounded self. And in that space, something powerful happens. You stop trying to fix the pain and start witnessing it. Witnessing is not analyzing. It's not intellectualizing. It's not solving. It's presence, quiet presence. The kind that sits with the ache without trying to silence it. The kind that says, you make sense. Your pain makes sense. Of course you feel this way. That kind of compassion is rare, but it's what opens the door to healing. Because healing doesn't happen through pressure. It happens through permission. Permission to feel, to grieve, to question, to rest, and most of all, to stop pretending that everything is fine when your soul is calling out for attention. And here's the deeper truth. Emotional pain isn't just personal. It's also existential. It's not just about your story. It's about the meaning of your story, the role you've played, the roles others forced you to play, the deeper questions that pain awakens. Why am I here? What is this suffering for? Is there something more? These questions are spiritual, and they cannot be answered by performance, they must be lived. And often the path to those answers leads through the valley of pain, not to punish you, but to purify you, not to wound you, but to awaken you. Think of the biblical image of Jacob wrestling the angel. He walks away limping but blessed, transformed, renamed. That's what emotional pain can do. It leaves a mark, but that mark becomes a sign, a testament, not of what broke you, but of what found you in the dark and refused to let you go. You're not broken. You're wrestling. And there is meaning in the wrestling. In the next part of this journey, we'll explore how to move through emotional pain not as something to escape, but as a sacred path toward integration, wisdom, and unshakable purpose. What if pain is not the thing to escape, but the very thing that leads you home? This idea isn't popular. We are conditioned to treat discomfort as failure. The moment sadness lingers, we ask what's wrong. The moment anxiety spikes, we seek distraction. We numb, scroll, run, pretend. But what if your emotional pain is not asking to be silenced, but to be honored? To honor pain means to give it space, to sit with it like a teacher, not a threat. And this is one of the hardest spiritual tasks, to stay present when every part of you wants to flee, to look with compassion on the parts of yourself that others have judged, or that you've disowned. Because true healing doesn't happen by fixing emotions. It happens by reconciling with them. Think of your pain as a language, one that's been speaking to you for years, but in a dialect no one taught you to translate. When you feel abandoned, it says, "I long to be held." When you feel anger, it says, "Something precious was crossed." When you feel anxiety, it whispers, "I'm afraid to be unprotected again." These are not disorders. They are inner messages. They are echoes of the sacred inside you calling for attention. And when you start to listen, you begin to hear the truth behind the ache. You were never meant to carry this alone. You were never meant to live disconnected from your own soul. And you were never meant to believe that being wounded meant being worthless. The truth is that most emotional pain doesn't come from what happened to you, but from what you were forced to believe because of it. That your needs didn't matter. That your voice was too much. That love had to be earned. These beliefs are not just painful. They become internal laws. And unless they are questioned, they become prisons. So how do we break free? First, we name the pain. Not in vague terms, but with sacred precision. I'm not just sad. I feel unwanted. I'm not just anxious. I feel unworthy unless I'm perfect. Naming pain gives you authority over it. It brings it from the shadows into the light. And in the light, things begin to shift. Not because the pain disappears, but because it stops defining you. Next, we tell the truth. About the stories we've carried, the roles we've played, the masks we've worn. This is not about blaming others, but about reclaiming your narrative. About asking, what is the truth beneath this story? Maybe the truth is, you were never too much. You were just too sensitive for an emotionally unavailable world. Maybe the truth is, you weren't weak for needing help. You were human in a culture that worships independence. And after truth comes compassion. Not the shallow kind. The kind that says, of course you feel this way. It makes perfect sense. And I'm not leaving you. That inner voice, steady, warm, grounded, becomes the voice of reparenting, of soul restoration, and slowly that compassion creates room for something even deeper, clarity. Clarity is not the absence of emotion. It's the presence of alignment. The moment you realize that your sadness is not a problem to solve, but a signal to shift. That your anger is not dangerous, it's directional. That your fear is not always true, but it's always speaking, and you begin to discern, what is mine to carry? What can I release? What is pain teaching me about who I truly am? This process is sacred because it moves you from reaction to revelation, from surviving your pain to partnering with it. Pain becomes a mirror, not of your failures, but of your depth, your capacity to feel, to love, to transform. And yes, it hurts. Growth always does. The soul doesn't expand through comfort, it expands through fire, through silence, through nights where you don't know who you are anymore. But if you stay in it, if you don't run, something remarkable happens. You begin to emerge, not as someone fixed, but as someone real, rooted, refined, free. And here is the deepest secret of all. Pain doesn't just break things, it also breaks open things. It opens space in the soul for beauty that comfort could never grow. It opens space for tenderness, for connection, for empathy that doesn't just see the wound, but walks with it. You become someone who no longer fears pain, because you've met God in it. You begin to realize, this pain did not come to destroy me, it came to awaken me. Every ancient tradition knew what modern life has forgotten. Pain is not the end of the path, it is the beginning of initiation. Emotional pain, especially, is a sacred passage. It's not a flaw in your system. It's the moment your soul starts asking deeper questions. Not just, how do I feel better? But what is this trying to become in me? This is the part of the journey where something old must die for something new to emerge. Not physically, but emotionally, spiritually, psychologically. The false self begins to crack. The version of you built to please others, the mask that kept you safe, the illusion of control, and in the cracking it feels like everything is falling apart. But maybe you're just finally falling into truth. This process is often misunderstood. People think transformation feels like power, like sudden clarity, like stepping into strength. But it doesn't, not at first. It feels like grief, like uncertainty, like silence, like sitting in the ruins of an identity that no longer fits, unsure of what comes next. This is the desert of the soul, and it's holy ground. You are not broken in this moment. You are in between what was and what will be, between stories, between masks, between identities, and it is here, in the tension, that something sacred can form. Because it's here that you stop performing and start listening. It's here that you stop proving and start being. The pain that brought you here is not your enemy. It is the messenger. And the message is this: you are more than your roles, more than your trauma, more than your productivity. You are a soul that longs to be whole, not perfect, but whole. And wholeness does not mean you never feel pain again. It means you're no longer afraid of feeling it. It means you know who you are, even when the world goes quiet. But this kind of knowing comes at a cost. It asks you to let go of comfort, of certainty, of the stories you tell yourself to feel safe. It asks you to sit in the unknown and trust, not blindly, but deeply. Because underneath the silence there is always a whisper, a presence, a truth that does not change with emotion. Cslewis called this the place where heaven whispers, and in that place the pain starts to shift. Not because it disappears, but because it begins to make sense. You begin to see, this pain didn't arrive to punish you. It came to purify what matters. It stripped away the distractions, the illusions, the noise. And in that stripping away, it returned you to something ancient inside yourself. The part that still believes, still hopes, still loves, still longs for meaning. This is what the mystics called the dark night of the soul. Not a depression, not a dysfunction, but a sacred unmaking, a disorientation before rebirth, a silence before the song, a breaking that prepares the vessel to receive new wine. And in this place, something powerful happens. You stop asking when the pain will end, and start asking what it came to teach. You stop waiting to feel better, and start becoming someone new. This is where healing takes root. Not in the absence of pain, but in your response to it, in your willingness to meet it with reverence. Because pain, when honored, becomes power. Not dominance, not control, but presence. A quiet power that says, I have been undone, and I am still here. I have wept and I have not lost my soul. I have broken and become real. This is what separates surviving from transforming. Survival says, just get through it. Transformation says, let it change you. So what would it look like to let your pain change you? not into someone harder, but into someone wiser, not into someone bitter, but into someone kinder, not into someone perfect, but into someone whole. It would mean seeing yourself not as a problem to solve, but a mystery to explore. It would mean asking new questions. Where does it still hurt? What truth have I been avoiding? What beauty have I forgotten? Because the truth is, you are not broken. You are breaking open. And what's opening is not weakness. It's the doorway to everything you've been longing for. Clarity, meaning, freedom, and love. Not the love that fixes you, but the love that sees you as you are and stays. Somewhere deep inside you, even beneath the ache, is a quiet knowing. It has no loud voice, it doesn't shout to be heard, but it's always been there, waiting. Waiting for the day you would stop running. Waiting for the moment you would stop believing the lie. The lie that you are broken, that you are too far gone, that something essential in you has been lost forever. But here you are, still breathing, still searching, still listening. And that alone is proof. You are not broken. You are becoming. Pain may have shaped you, yes, but it did not define you. What defines you is your capacity to respond, to choose again, to forgive, to rise. Not because you forget the wound, but because you no longer let it name you. You are not your trauma. You are not your diagnosis. You are not the worst thing you've done or the worst thing done to you. You are the one who lived, the one who endured, the one who kept going even when the night offered no light. That's not brokenness, that's resilience, that's sacred defiance, that's soul. And yes, some days it doesn't feel that way. Some days it still hurts. Some days the voice of shame returns, the doubt, the fear, the exhaustion. That's okay. Healing is not linear, it's layered. And every layer brings you closer, not to perfection, but to presence. To the moment when you look in the mirror and see someone real, not someone fixed, someone faithful. Faithful to the truth, faithful to the process, faithful to the you that never gave up. What if that was enough? What if healing is not about never hurting again, but about never abandoning yourself again when it hurts? This is what the Stoics knew, that we don't control the storms of life, but we can choose how we stand in them. That strength isn't the absence of emotion, it's the mastery of it. And mastery doesn't mean suppression, it means integration. To feel deeply and still act wisely, to carry the wound but walk with dignity, to cry and still continue, to tremble and still tell the truth. The world will always try to tell you who you are. Too much, too sensitive, too weak, too late. But those voices are not your identity. Your identity is sacred, your soul is sovereign, and your worth has never depended on being pain-free. It has only ever depended on being real. So this is the invitation to stop running, to stop proving, to stop trying to earn what was never meant to be earned. Your right to exist, to belong, to be loved. You don't need to fix your way back to love. You need only to remember it was never gone. Pain has a way of making us forget. It covers the soul like fog. But even fog cannot erase the mountain. And your soul is still there, steady, ancient, radiant beneath the ache. So let the pain come. Let it speak, let it weep, and then let it pass. Not because it was meaningless, but because it gave its message. It revealed what needed to be seen. It called home what had been lost. And now it no longer needs to hold you hostage. You are free to move forward, not by denying the past, but by walking with it, redeemed. You are not broken. You are breaking open to life, to truth, to love. To the you that has always been waiting beneath the weight of pain to rise. So rise, even with trembling hands, even with an unfinished story, even with the scar still tender. Because this world does not need perfect people. It needs whole people. And wholeness begins right here, in the choice to believe that your pain still has purpose, and your soul still has songs left to sing.